Have you ever set your alarm for 5 a.m. absolutely determined that tomorrow will be the day? The day you finally become that productive, calm, super organized version of yourself. But then morning comes and reality sets in. So the same wave of tiredness, that same voice in your head saying, just 5 more minutes, just 10 more minutes, and after 10 minutes, say, just 5 more minutes, and before you know it, you've snoozed your way into frustration, disappointment, and maybe even a bit of self-doubt. If that sounds a bit familiar, trust me, you're not alone. I'm a good example. It's happening to me. I struggle with it sometimes. Many people struggle with it sometimes, but we just got to work on ourselves, on our systems. So many of us want to change something in our lives. Wake up earlier, work out more, eat healthy diets, and of course be more present. And we try, we really do, but somehow it never sticks. And the fact is, it's not because you're lazy or lack willpower. It's because we've been trying to use motivation to do a job that science says belongs to something else entirely, your habits. We explore why some habits feels nearly impossible to speak, why others become like second nature. And more importantly, we are finally going to talk about how you can make those good habits last. And here's what you walk away with by the end of this video. You won't just understand how habits work, you will have a practical step-by-step blueprint to build the habits that you've always wanted. And those are habits that actually stick. So whether you are trying to become more disciplined, break a bad pattern, or finally feel in control of your day, this video will give you the roadmap that you need. So go ahead and grab your notebook or just a quiet space. So let's take the pressure off, breathe, and finally understand how to build a habit that transforms life. Alright, let's take a step back for a second and talk about something that often gets overlooked. What exactly is a habit? From a scientific point of view, well, in the simplest term, a habit is your brain's way of automating certain behaviors to conserve energy. And this isn't just a nice productivity hack, it's actually a survival mechanism hardwired into how our brain functions and work. And according to the author of Power of Habits, every habit operates on a loop made up of 3 components: cue, routine, and reward. And the thing is, your brain is constantly looking for ways to do things more efficiently, and habits are the shortcuts it loves to use. So what we should know is that the key player in this process is something called the basal ganglia. It's a deep primitive part of your brain that is responsible for storing routine behaviors. So this is that part of your brain that allows you to drive home or walk home on autopilot, or tie your shoelaces without thinking, or whatever you do naturally without thinking. And on the other hand, your prefrontal cortex, that is the area that is responsible for decision making. All the decisions we are making, that is responsible for them. Problem solving and impulse control uses a lot more energy. So then, when you're trying to start a new habit, it's this part of the brain that is doing the heavy lifting. And that is why it can feel so mentally exhausting. And here is a super relatable example. Think about brushing your teeth. You don't wake up every day having an internal debate about it, unless of course you have a bad hygiene. So you don't say to yourself, alright, now pick up the brush, now find the toothpaste. You just do it effortlessly. You don't have to think about them or prepare for them. So now let's take this idea and apply it to something that we are all guilty of: scrolling on social media. And platforms like TikTok and Instagram have actually mastered the habit loop. And here is how usually it plays out. You feel bored or a little anxious, and that's your cue. So what do? You instinctively reach out for your phone and open immediately TikTok or Instagram. And what I plan to do going forward is not to keep my phones close to where I am, unless of course when I'm making important calls or maybe sending out important messages. And that is the routine. Now we have moved from cue, which is you get bored, reach out for your phone, and that's the routine. Your cue is you get bored. Your routine is picking up your phone and going straight, opening your Instagram or TikTok. In seconds, you're watching funny and engaging, emotionally stimulating content. And of course, that's your reward. Even when you go on Reddit, you see users talking about this in real time. There are countless threads in the self-improvement subreddit where people are saying things like, I didn't even notice I was on the phone for an hour. I opened it and suddenly it was dark outside. And that's simply the habit loop in action. Completely automatic, totally subconscious. So social media platforms understand these habit loops than most of us do, and they have designed their app keep you in that loop. But the good news is the exact same mechanism, the same cue, routine, and reward system can be used to build positive, life-enhancing habits as well. And as Ali Abdal wisely puts it, habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. And this is because the effects multiply over time. So the goal isn't for you to force yourself to do something by your sheer willpower. Instead, it's to build habits in a way that feels very natural. So ingrained that you hardly notice that you're even doing them. And that's when a habit truly sticks, when it becomes a second nature and part of who you are. So let's talk about something that frustrates almost everyone at some point. Why is waking up early or sticking to any new habit is so incredibly hard? And most of us assume that it's because we lack discipline or that we just need to be more motivated. Motivation doesn't work in this context. You think if I could just push myself a little harder, but it doesn't work that way. And by working harder, you start thinking, I'll finally become more consistent. But the fact most people don't realize, motivation is actually one of the most unreliable tools we can use. It doesn't work. It rather makes it harder when you depend on motivation. So it's driven by dopamine, your brain's reward chemical. And while it gives you a great initial boost, it fades really quickly. So think of it like a spark. It can ignite a fire, but it can't keep the fire going. So let me tell you a story that you might find relatable. So let's talk about Leah for a second. She was so motivated to become a morning person. So she set alarm for 5 a.m., laid out her workloads, and she does this the night before and even picks out Spotify playlists to, of course, hype herself up. And day one, she crossed it, she was loving it. Day two was a little harder for her, but she got up. And by day 4, she was hitting snooze. Finally, by day 6, she was back to waking up by 7:30, feeling like she had failed. And she started to tell herself things like, maybe I'm not just cut out for this, or I don't have enough willpower. But the thing is, Leah didn't fail because she was weak or lazy. She failed because she was relying solely on motivation instead of building a habit system that will carry her when motivation dips. This happens to so many people. In fact, if you go to Reddit, specifically the self-improvement subreddit, you see post after post from people saying things like, why do I keep failing to stick to my habits? Or I always start strong but then fall off. We even see this on TikTok and Instagram as well. People post a video on day 1 of their new morning routine. Maybe it's a 5 a.m. waking up challenge or a 30-day transformation. They are excited, they are inspired, and by day, nothing, silence, no more videos. It's not that they gave up, it's that the dopamine boost wore off and there was no structure to keep them going. Even YouTubers who are known for their discipline have struggled with this. Take Matt Davila, for example. He once said, motivation is unreliable. Systems create consistency. And honestly, that's changed how I think about everything. And the key takeaway here is this. If your new habit is built only on motivation, it's going to collapse the moment life gets inconvenient. So instead of relying on feelings that are inspired all the time, we need to build habits that are backed by structure. And that means asking our questions like, have I created a clear cue that reminds me to start? And have I made the action small enough that it's easy to do? Also, have I made the reward obvious and satisfying? And this is because if we are not doing those things, we are simply just trying to start a habit with no plan, no structure, and hoping it will work. And then we are not actually building a habit. We are just improvising, we are guessing, and that really works in the long run. So from now on, the goal isn't to try harder, it's to build smarter. So now that we've talked about why habits often fail, Let's talk about what's actually happening in our brain when a habit forms or doesn't. And this is where it gets really interesting. Neuroscientists have found out that every time you repeat a behavior, your brain strengthens the neural connections related to that behavior. And this is part of a process called synaptic plasticity, which basically means your brain is always adapting and rewiring itself based on what you do consistently. There is a famous principle called Ebb's law, which says that neurons that fire together wire together. So when you repeat a habit like waking up early, journaling, stretching, or whatever it is, you're literally reinforcing the pathways in your brain that make that behavior easier to repeat the next time. So let's take waking up as an example. On the first few days, it's quite painful. Your body resists, your brain is like, why are we doing this? This isn't how we operate. For example, I'm recording this video early in the morning because I couldn't meet up recording the previous day. And to do this, I had to wake up 2 to 3 or 2 hours earlier than I usually do. And it was quite hard for me to wake up. I had to push myself knowing that I have to record this video before going out for the day. So it was very hard for the body, and of course I snoozed like 3 times before I finally got up. So let's say you do it anyway, you get out of bed, make a cup of coffee, or maybe sit in silence, or read a few pages of a book. That's one repetition. Do it again the next day. That's another vote for the identity of someone who wakes up early. Keep going and your brain eventually, okay, I get it now. This is our new normal. And here is something really cool I saw on Reddit. Someone sharing their journey of waking up early at 6:30 a.m. every day for 60 days straight. The first 2 weeks was misery. But by the 3rd week, they started waking up naturally before the alarm. And that's the brain rewiring itself. The habit wasn't just forced, it was formed. Now, one of the best strategies to make this process easier is what James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, calls habit stacking. It's simple but it's powerful. And the idea is, instead of trying to create new habits from scratch, you attach it to something you already do. You basically piggyback on an existing habit, something that already has a strong neutral pathway, and you can use this as a trigger. So for example, let's say you want to stop using your phone right before bed and instead plan your next morning. You might say, after I brush my teeth, I'll write down my 3 tasks for tomorrow. Or for our waking up early example, after I make my bed, I'll go open the window and drink some water. So this small repeatable moment helps your brain make the new behavior part of a sequence that feels automatic. And here is why this works so well. Your brain loves patterns. It wants to do what's familiar, what's been repeated, what's part of a reading. I guess it doesn't like being stressed. So if you link new actions to something you already do, you are simply speeding up the wiring process. And the author of Atomic Habits explains this wisely when he says, every action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to become. So every time you follow through, even if it's just getting out of bed when the alarm rings, you are casting a vote for your future self. Sounds incredible. And those votes, they start to add up really quickly. So it's not about perfection, it's about repetition, and it's about systems, and it's about giving your brain the structure it needs to do the heavy lifting for you. Alright, now that you understand the neuroscience, which is how repetition literally rewires your brain, let's get practical. Because the question now is, how do I actually make my habits stick when life gets busy, stressful, or chaotic? I'm going to give you some of the most powerful science-backed strategies to build habits that actually last. And yes, they work whether you are trying to wake up earlier, journaling, or trying to work out consistently, or just drinking more water every day. So the first strategy is to make it obvious, because your brain loves clear signals. The easier it is to notice a cue, the easier it is to start an habit. So ask yourself, what's currently reminding you to start this habit? If the answer is nothing, that's the problem. For example, if you want to start reading in the morning, leave a book next to your pillow or next to your toothbrush, and that's your visual cue. And let's say you want to stretch daily, roll out your yoga mat before you even make coffee. And for you, if it is you want to drink more water, place a full water bottle on your bedside or your desk, somewhere you can't ignore it. And then the second strategy is for you to make it easy to do. And one of the biggest mistakes people make is trying to start big, going from 0 to a 2-hour gym routine or journaling 6 pages before bed, and it's just not sustainable. So instead of doing this and even overstressing yourself, try the 2-minute rule. And this comes from James Clear's Atomic Habits. So when you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. For example, if you want to read more, just start by reading 1 page. If you want to journal daily, start by writing 1 sentence. This might seem simple, but these are your building blocks. If you want to meditate, just sit in silence for 2 minutes. And you might be asking why. This is because the goal is not to achieve perfection. It is to start. And once you start, continue, this becomes easier. And the third strategy is for you to make it rewarding, allowing your brain to know that it's worth it. So give yourself a small reward, something that immediately makes the habit feels good. For example, if you successfully wake up at your target time, allowing yourself 10 minutes of guilty-free scrolling, a usher or your favorite podcast while making breakfast. Or better yet, use a habit tracker, because the feeling of checking off a completed habit is surprisingly satisfying. And that's dopamine at work. Apps like Abisha or Strix turn habit tracking into game, which adds a sense of progress and fun. And then we can call this a bonus strategy. Use environment design. This one, of course, is underrated but incredibly powerful. Don't rely on willpower. Design your space to support your new habits. If you want to stop using your phone first thing in the morning, charge it across the room. If you want to write more, assuming you want to become a writer, leave your laptop open on a clean desk with your writing dock already up. And if you want to eat healthier, keep foods in plain sight and hide snacks. And this YouTuber, Ali Abdal, talks about this a lot. He doesn't depend on motivation. He arranges his environment so the right choice is also the easy choice. He says that if you rely on discipline, the system is broken. So the big idea here is that we often overestimate what we can do with motivation, but underestimate what we can do with systems. So make it obvious, make it easy, make it rewarding. Design your environment, because habits don't stick through force. They stick through smart repetition, in structure and simplicity. So we've gone deep into the science. We've talked about how your brain works, how repetition wires habit, and how to make them stick with practical strategies. But let's bring this to life, because this isn't just theory, it's real and it works. So let's talk about Alex, for example. Alex isn't a productivity guru. He's not a YouTuber, a morning routine influencer. He's just a regular person, someone who, like so many of us, struggle with feeling stuck. He was constantly overwhelmed, barely getting out of bed on time, hitting snooze 5 times or 6 times every single morning. His mornings felt chaotic, his days felt rushed, and by the time he sat down to work, he's already drained. And the worst part is he genuinely wanted a change. He tried everything, watched motivational videos, writing goals in a journal, and even buying expensive apps and courses. But nothing he tried seems to stick. He will start strong on a Monday, feel a little proud by Tuesday, but by Thursday, he was already back in the same loop. Does this sound familiar? Then one day, Alex stumbled on a post, ironically on Reddit, where someone has written about this idea. What if you're not lazy? What if your environment isn't just set up to help you succeed? That simple sentence hit him hard. So instead of focusing on trying harder, Alex decided to try smarter, and he simply applied what we've talked about in this video. He didn't aim for massive morning routine. Instead, he did something small but intentional. And here's what he did. He started placing his phone across the room at night to force himself out of bed in the morning. Wow. Right after brushing his teeth, he started a habit. He would drink a glass of water and open his curtains to let sunlight in. He didn't touch social media until after breakfast, and he used a simple habit tracker to check off each day he stuck to the routine. So no dramatic 5 a.m. ice bath, no two-step routine, just a few science-backed tricks that gave his brain the structure it needed. And the results, well, they aren't instant, but they were powerful. And by the second week, he started feeling less resistance. And by the fourth week, he noticed he was waking up before his alarm. And by the sixth week, the morning felt peaceful and calm, like his day belonged to him again. So Alex didn't change his life overnight, but he did change the momentum of his life. And something that is even more powerful, because here is the thing. Transformation doesn't come from one big flashy effort. It comes from small changes done consistently and intentional over time. So if you'll be feeling like Alex, if your mornings are chaotic, if your habits keep slipping, if you're tired of starting every Monday, please know that it's not because you're broken or lazy or incapable. It's because, like most of us, you've probably been trying to build change on top of pure motivation. Instead of a system your brain actually understands and responds to. And just like Alex, you can shift that. You can create habits that stick, not because you force them, but because they fit. Okay, so now that we've seen people like Alex can transform their life, can transform their habit with the right system. Let's clear up one of the biggest misconceptions in the world of habit building. You've probably heard this before. It takes 21 days to build the habit. It's catchy, it's simple, it seems doable, but unfortunately it's not true. At least not for most people. This idea actually came from a plastic surgeon, Dr. Maxwell. Back in the 1960s, he noticed that it took his patients about 21 days to get used to changes in their environment, like a loose job or an amputation. And somehow that evolved into a global self-help rule, which is 21 days to build a habit. But when researchers actually looked into this, they found something totally different. One of the most well-known studies on habit formation came out of University College London. A health psychology researcher named Dr. Philippa and her team followed people over several weeks as they tried to build new habits. Things like drinking more water, eating more fruit, or exercising more. And what they found was eye-opening. On average, it took people 66 days to form a habit, not 21, not even 30. 66. And even more interesting, there was a huge range. For some, it took just 18 days, and for others, it took over 200. So what does that tell us? It tells us that building a habit is not about hitting some magical number. It's about consistency and patience. Because the truth is, your brain doesn't care how many days it's been. What it cares about is how many times you've repeated the behavior. If you do something daily, even if it is small, your brain starts to recognize it. It starts to automate it. But that takes time, real time, not Instagram time, not 30-day challenge time, but the kind of time that is built on grace, persistence, and a little bit of forgiveness when you miss a day. So instead of aiming for perfection in 21 days, aim for progress over 90 days. Instead of saying, I have to do this perfectly, try saying, I'm going to cast a small vote for the person I want to become every single day. Because that mindset shift, that right there, is what builds habits that last. So let's take a deep breath and zoom in for a moment. We've covered a lot in this video, and if you've made it this far, seriously, I want to say thank you. Because it means you are not just interested in change, you are committed to understanding how change actually works. So let's quickly recap what we've learned. We started with the truth that motivation alone isn't enough. It's too unreliable to build something lasting. Then we explored the science of how your brain forms habits through repetition, through wiring, through small daily votes for the kind of person you want to become. We looked at the habit loop, the cue, routine, and reward, and how apps like TikTok and Instagram use it to hook us, and how we can use it to hook ourselves into better routines. We talked about real life strategies like making it obvious, easy, and rewarding, and how systems always beat willpower. And you heard Alex's story, How small intentional changes completely transformed his morning. Completely transformed his mornings. And we debunked the 21-day myth, because real habits change doesn't happen on a timeline. It happens through consistent repetition, and that is over time. So here is what I want to leave with you. You are not broken if your habits haven't stuck in the past. You are not lazy if you started and stopped 100 times. You've just been trying to fight your brain instead of working with it. But now you know better. You understand how habits actually form. You've got the tools, the science, the systems, and now it's your turn to act on it. So here is my challenge to you. Before you close this video, comment with one habit you're going to start building today. It doesn't have to be big. In fact, it shouldn't be. Keep it small, keep it simple, but make it real. So thank you, and I hope to see you in my next video.